Good afternoon, and welcome to today's webcast, Elevate Your Financial Planning to the Cloud. Before we begin, I'm going to play a brief housekeeping video.
Welcome, and thank you for viewing our webcast series. Before we begin, please keep the following in mind. You can customize how you view our presentation and interact with the presenter. For better viewing, close all other applications and turn up your speaker volume. You can adjust window size and placement or enter full screen mode using the controls at the top right of the window or dragging the bottom right-hand corner to resize. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a series of icons that relate to a different aspect of our session. You can download a PDF of today's slides from the Slide Deck and Handouts widget. You can ask questions by typing in the Q&A window and clicking Submit. We'll do our best to answer all questions or follow up via email. If you experience technical difficulty, refresh your browser by hitting the F5 key. This presentation is not legal, investment, or accounting advice. We encourage you to seek the counsel of a professional service provider to apply this content to your specific circumstances.
I'm pleased to introduce today's presenters from Moss Adams, Loren Den Herder, Managing Director, and Brian Favorat, Senior Manager. Loren is a firm leader in business intelligence and corporate performance management. He helps businesses improve their processes, become more efficient, and make better decisions. Brian has over 9 years of experience selecting, maintaining, and deploying financial system solutions and has provided management consulting services to public, private, and nonprofit clients. With that, I'll turn it over to Loren to get us started.
Thank you, Chad, and thank you everybody for joining this afternoon. We have a lot of information to cover here for you, so we're just going to jump right into this. So we're talking about elevating your financial planning to the cloud. To kind of sum that up, it's really about delivering management insights. And so I want to just take a minute here and talk about some of the key items of that. To start with, on the right-hand side towards the bottom, there's a very interesting metric that we find to kind of hold true over time. That is that, of all the effort that goes into your annual targets, annual budgeting, in about 4 to 6 months, 64% of those cases, it's really obsolete. And what that really highlights is for the effort that you put into it, it's really important that you have something that makes that easy so that you can keep updating that solution or keep updating the budget and the plan to stay current with what's really going on. And so when we're talking about that and looking for solutions for it, we're really talking about embedding the planning in the management insights. And so you want something where at the time you're seeing where the actuals are landing, you also want to have that plan right there side by side with it and have that mix in a very easy way. And we'll see a little later on in this presentation how the timing of that is such a key element of all of that. But the great thing about having your plan right there is when you have those metrics side by side with the actuals, it gives some meaning to what the results are. And so it gives you a chance to look at it and see, are things on track? Has anything changed? For if you have the forecast right next to it, and then you can see, what is the difference between what we originally budgeted for, how it actually turned out, and what the new forecast is to keep everything on track. So all of that really gets into what is it that defines an agile organization or an agile team. It's that ability to really get to those real-time comparisons, have the information at the fingertip to make the decisions, and then have something to judge how things are going in a very quick and real way. So putting that all together is not really that easy of a task in many cases. So to do that, you really have to have information available very, very quickly in near real time. And then that is what makes for agile decision making. It's something where when you're ready to make the decision, you have information right there embedded in the business process where you can say, here's how things are going, here's how we would like them to go, how we already thought about them, and then be able to make the decision on how you keep things on track. Now, commonly, this is a very time-consuming process, requires a lot of key resources. People that are really in the know have to take time and go pull that all together. Business systems are more complex today, and so they have to go through and look at multiple different sources to get that information pulled in. And then when you look at that information, if it's pulled in a manual way, often one department will look at it one way and a different department will look at it a different way, and you just spend some time reconciling, is that the same thing? So these are all those common challenges that we all know as we're trying to pull together all this information that's out there in the systems that may not be right there at our fingertips. So a common solution that we will often see used is spreadsheets. And so they're very powerful, kind of the go-to solution, but there's all the challenges that we know. So at top of the list almost always in this is version control. Which spreadsheet is it? Is it, the version 1, version 2, final version, final version, the one I sent you last week? The list goes on about, which one are we really working from? In addition to that, there's the data security piece of that. So you want to be able to have the appropriate data out in front of people without showing them things that are not really part of their area of responsibility, but have the whole model hold together as a whole unit for the whole organization. And so, that presents some real challenges when you get into working with spreadsheets and then having to pull that together in a consolidated fashion across the organization. Then there's limited dimensionality. Those spreadsheets are very flexible, and there's any number of sheets, but you do have the 2 dimensions. You have to create that dimensionality over time. And so a tool that gives you multiple dimensions, that's just part of its DNA, is really what kind of sets these kind of things apart from the spreadsheets, where it gets complicated pretty fast when you start adding levels of departments and time and products or services or whatever it is that is really germane to your business. And then when you start laying these in, it becomes very, very complex. So just putting the plan together is one thing, then taking those numbers and then pulling them out and mixing with how actuals it goes. There's just a lot of effort that goes into that type of a solution. So what we wanted to do then with that backdrop is just go through a quick polling question here and just see, get a little better view of our audience and just see, how often do your department managers see updated comparisons between the business results and the plan? And this is one where, this is an area that we'd like to kind of drill into with our clients and with our prospects, because this is one that helps to highlight, where are you at in terms of really being an agile organization? And this is also right in the middle of the value proposition of engaging the organization in a very meaningful way and in a continuous way. And so just getting a view of, how your organization is doing this just helps us to understand our audience a little bit better here. So let me just click forward on this. And so I do see there's a few in continuous, so congratulations on that. That is one where it's just starting to inch up. The most common one we see here is monthly. So this is a common view for us to see. And then, quarterly is usually right behind it, but, usually a distant second. So this is commonly what we see. And then what we'll highlight a little further into this presentation is having it be at least weekly, if not continuously. There is a lot of business value in that. So when we're talking about, enabling or having your planning out in the cloud and having it really elevated, what really that is driving at is that when we talk to CEOs, they really want their organization to be data-driven. And so, and again, a poll that we run over and over again, it comes in, then that mid to low 80% are always saying they want it to be more data-driven. But the reality is like only about 30% of them actually are, and they're looking for ways that that can become more and more real and permeated throughout the organization. And that's what the model here is really talking about, is to say, do you have a solution where you can take key decision scenarios, put them in, it embeds that right into the middle of the business process, and then the whole organization can work together in a very real time and consolidated way, and then see the full impact of that across the organization. So, and this is where it gets really complex in spreadsheets, and where some kind of tooling can really help with this. If you're using spreadsheets, there's usually a delay. Anytime there's a delay in the planning side, it just delays all the business processes behind that. So anywhere from resource management, supply chain, services you're putting out there, decisions that need to be made, it all has an impact when there's a delay there. So being more data-driven just has a lot of business value back behind it. So a tool that we want to highlight today around this that helps solve this problem is this Workday Adaptive Planning. Yeah, just a quick screenshot here. We'll get into a demo here in just a minute. But what this really does is it brings in all your organization, all the departments of your organization, and then allows them to work on their own areas of input in a very secure environment where the tool pulls it all together and then gives that reporting and consolidation capabilities where it's automatically pulling in the plan or the forecast that you would like, and then be able to show that, be able to run what if scenarios, summarize of key results, and give you that real view in a near real-time basis, so you can continuously see how things are moving forward. So with that introduction to the tool set we want to highlight today, I will turn it over to Brian, and he will run through a quick demo so you can see what we're talking about here.
Perfect. Thank you, Loren. Bear with me, everyone, as I transition my screen. All right, very good. So here's welcome to Workday Adaptive Planning. Wanted to show a little bit about that transition from moving to perhaps that spreadsheet environment into a systemized tool to help centralize things. And where we see a lot of value in a tool like this is how it looks not all too different from a lot of the Excel environments everybody is familiar with, right? So in here, you're seeing things like the version that we're on. So here we have the working budget. Here we're on the level for Sales North. So in this demo, I'm imagining myself as the manager here of Sales North. And this is a very simple P&L income statement sheet here. So we have our revenue accounts at the top. We have some expense accounts as we come down. But also what we're seeing, and which is a really handy feature, is the actuals data. So as I scroll to the left here, we're seeing in all the green text, this is actuals data that would come in from the accounting system, perhaps on a daily basis. And then on the right, we have all of our planning and our forecast data. So what this really represents is a forecast for FY23. So at the top, as the manager here, I can see, okay, I have some of my revenue accounts. They're populated with data. Perhaps there's models sitting behind these that are driving some of the numbers that we're seeing based off of pricing and units and other components and factors in the business. And as we scroll down and look at some of these expenses, I'm seeing, okay, payroll, taxes and benefits. So my chart of accounts, I'm very well oriented here in this structure. And as we go down lower, I'm seeing some other line items that perhaps they have some models behind them, or perhaps maybe some discretionary authority given to the manager here. So as a simple example, I have this account 6510 advertising. Perhaps I want to start introducing some more expense to the business at this particular level. So if I scroll to the left, one thing I'm noticing, oh, there's no actuals behind that. Well, perhaps the process had been that all the advertising was posted to corporate, and maybe we want to transition going forward and bring some of that down here. So now I'm tasked to assign some costs to this part of the organization. I'm looking to do some advertising as a group. I can go in just like I would in Excel, and I can change one of these numbers, sort of January. Perhaps I want to increase that a little bit. Simply click Save at the top, apply my change, and now I have a new number in there. Or perhaps I don't plan so much on the monthly basis that way, but rather on the aggregate, the year. What I can do is I can plug in a value for the year, so simply type it in there, breaks that back. I have some different options for how I might do that. Puts a new number in those months. I click Save, and off I go. And in other instances too, if there's some history behind the account, perhaps there's some proportionality to when certain expenses are recognized. So you have a lot of that capability in the system. Taking a little bit further, I'm going to scroll up here again and take a look at our payroll section. So on salaries and wages, when you see this little blue triangle, what that indicates to me is there's a formula that's sitting behind that to drive that value. So that 38,817, what that tells me is it wasn't just simply keyed in, but there's a calculation that's bringing that here. What we often see in Excel is some kind of reference like, okay, we're sitting in, the salary and wages account, and this value showing up in column, H, perhaps. And we're saying, okay, well, where does this really come from? Well, go to, AH 26 through 35, and it does some sort of sum of that. And then I have to kind of navigate over there. Rather than doing that, what this formula tells me is this is a formula that says, okay, this data comes from an account and it's in the personnel model in the salary account. Okay, so that's information that I understand. So having access, being the manager, I'm going to pivot now over to my personnel model, or as some refer to it, the workforce planning model. And what I'm seeing here is a list, a buildup, if you will, of our roster. And this is, again, sales north, so everybody in my department here. And I'm able to see our people, their titles perhaps, their residency for tax purposes. Why would we put that in there? Perhaps we want to calculate taxes relative to their location, start date, health benefits plans, pension plans, 401ks perhaps, pay raises that we want to incorporate. So all the real planning mechanisms to personnel can be built into here to mirror the business. And then this is really the input information, the on the face information of what we understand about these people. What Adaptive is doing behind this, once this information's updated, we click into row details here. And what this will provide us is a breakdown of all those expenses and their values. So now as I scroll over to when this person begins, we have information around their headcount, salary, bonus, perhaps recruiting fees if applicable, taxes, benefits, maybe some local taxes as well, different areas, or international, whatever the case might be. New hire information, termination information. So there's a whole slew of calculations that is all done right here automatically behind the scene. So really all I'm having to do is make sure my information here is up to date, and then Adaptive does all the work to calculate those formulas, and it brings that salary information right to the forefront here. Or perhaps for this department's, in their case, commissions and any bonus that might be pertinent as well. So very useful, very nifty that way. Also, within Adaptive, after these updates have been made to the system, we might want to have a different view, or perhaps we want to do some tracking and accountability and seeing how things are trending, or what happened over time. Because a lot of times what we're seeing is everybody's looking at what's happening. So it takes a little time to get this information together perhaps and put it into a report that we can make sense of. So here I have a simple example of a variance, an expense variance report, doing both on the month and year to date. And I'm just going to scroll in here just to make sure everybody can see the numbers a little bit better. We have some different account categories, and as I have access to this report, I can just kind of break things out to perhaps a certain area that I might like to see. So what this shows me is a variety of different formulas and calculations going against my actuals and my working budget to produce, okay, what are my variances? Is there anything that needs to draw my attention? So you have some different formatting and highlighting here. And then in addition to that, as you're building up these reports, what it's really doing is helping to augment that part of the process. So now once I've built up the report, I can start putting some notes on the right here to give some indication as to perhaps why something was a bit of a miss. Why didn't we spend what we had thought we were going to spend, or why did we overspend? Perhaps it's just a timing issue, or maybe we needed some new resources or new tools, whatever the case might be. We can have that all in here. We add some notes. And then, again, to help support that reporting cycle, we can simply create a snapshot of that and have that saved off for reference later. So very easy to manipulate, navigate. At the top here, again, I have access to change different parts of the company. I can change time. So very easy to navigate and maneuver around. So going on to our next section here, we have some dashboarding. So as many of you know, or have already guessed, having data automated and available to the right resources can be a challenging task. Often we're working with clients who are operating largely Excel, which can make the process of budgeting challenging for a variety of reasons. Key here is the timeliness and access to data, as Loren had mentioned. Utilizing a system such as Workday Adaptive Planning creates a platform to centralize and automate much of the business processes that occur as part of the budgeting and forecasting cycles. We find there's significant value in getting the right data to the right people in the right window. What I'm showing you here are some examples of those insights that can be had from the business and organized in such a way to achieve certain objectives. So here we have the classics: net product revenue, EBITDA, margin percentage, breakout of product revenue by size. We can also have our actuals, prior year, and our forecast all inlaid with each other. So what this is really helping us to do is observe what is happening rather than what has happened. So here with these dashboards, we can illuminate that which we're looking to track, manage, and monitor, and to help really meet our tactical or strategic objectives as an organization. So with that, I will turn it back to you, Loren.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Yeah, and thank you for taking us through that example. The reason we wanted to go through that is just to show you there are tools out there in the cloud that can really automate a lot of things that are a manual process in spreadsheets today. And with that, this is value-based approach. You're looking like, where's the business value in this? And this is really the beginning of that story. Is there's two different triangles here. So the one where it's done manually, the current state right there in the middle of the screen, it takes just getting the data, getting it all formatted to the right reports. That's 80% of the time. So leaving a limited time to see what the results are. But embedded in the 80% of the time in those manual processes is just asking for errors. It's complicated. And so you're making decisions on things where you're not always sure it is, consistent error-free message. When you automate that and use a tool like Brian was showing us here, it not only makes it faster, but you have the confidence that those are the real numbers. And it is bringing us into a decision-making window that is much wider and easier to have conversations around, but you're doing that with consistent, proven data. So a lot of business value right there. Another thing, when we're talking about embedding information in the business process, here's a model. What that really means is for high-performing organizations, we find that they plan, they keep a close track on their performance, and that's really all embedded around their people. But with those three things, they will, what really makes that real? What ties it together? And it's the information. It's the data that ties it together. So having a platform where you can go and see all of this in one place and see from a person's perspective, what was the plan? What was the performance? Or from a plan perspective, what people were involved and what was their performance. And so this is just a model that shows if you're working in spreadsheets, it just adds a lot of friction to the system. If you have a solution that takes the friction out, it also adds the business value of doing that much more quickly and having people more engaged in the overall process. So just speaking of engagement there, you heard Brian say a couple of times this difference between the question of what's happened and what is happening. So I just wanted to highlight that a little bit right here. What we were seeing, like even in the poll questions, like your managers are looking at data, once a month. And usually what that means is, the plan data is available. It is in spreadsheets. As the actuals come in, you need to merge those two things together and then break out all the different departmental spreadsheets, put them out there. And if you're really on your game, you get that done in a week, week and a half. By the time it's published out to your different managers and departments, about that 2-week mark, and then they are, working with and either validating the decisions they already had to make or making their decisions. The problem with that is the period's already done. You can't change it, and you're significantly into the next period. So we call that what happened. If you change that so that they have information all the time in real time, like you were seeing in the demo, that's in the decision-making window. You're changing the question to what's happening. And if you just think about that from an engagement perspective, if you ask somebody what has happened, they'll kind of tell their story that they're going to tell, or what's happening, it's really kind of a lean-in engagement type of a question. And there is massive business value right there in just changing that question. So that's really what we're highlighting there. What that also enables is this rolling forecast. So if the traditional budget, you kind of have this cliff at the end of the year, and then you get back to it and you kind of pull it all together again and move that cliff forward. But with a powerful tool where you can go in and continuously be looking at what is happening, then you push that planning horizon forward on a month-to-month basis, and you always have, you say, like, what should happen the next month and what should happen a year from now, and keep that a very active and engaged conversation about what is happening and what do we want to happen, and really driving that continuous business value and engagement within the team. So just to kind of pull this all back together here, there are a lot of benefits to this automated planning and reporting, and being able to have people have real good, I would say, near-time access to their information. So it empowers that rolling forecast that we just saw there, and brings in that level of engagement with your management team. Also makes the whole process of budgeting, planning, looking forward way more efficient. And that's efficiency is really the thing that kind of gets in the way of keeping things up to date. That's why we're seeing that statistic out there that 64% of budgets are like wildly out of date in 4 to 6 months, because the business climate has changed. It was something happened that we didn't really couldn't plan for. And so to stay on top of that, having a solution that really is efficient in getting that done and takes the work out of it, that's what is key to driving that business value. And then automated consolidation. We all know that consolidations is just a ton of work. And so having a solution that can really roll up the whole organization, multiple entities, multiple different types of ownership structures, and do it in an automated, very quick, real-time way. Lots of value now, so you can get to the results and then have more time to work with the results. And then this what if analysis. It's one thing to be able to put together budgets and plans, but have that same power to pull together your what if scenarios it's really helpful, because you get that full organization plan on what if you did do something, have everybody weigh in on that. If you have that all pulled together, then here's kind of what happens in the organization is there's this virtuous cycle that goes on. And it really begins there on the left, where it says your managers have the information they need to truly be responsive to the business environment at hand. And when they're responsive to that, then they're able to kind of move to the next thing. Then they're adaptable. They have the information to make their decisions. They can adapt to say, okay, here's what we need to do in this instance. Here's how we need to adjust forecast going forward. We need to pull in our surrounding teams with us. Doing that means that then you're collaborative. And then so you're kind of moving in this virtuous cycle. So you're working together with this information. You all have the same basic information. When you have teams or groups of teams that are working together that way, now they become empowered because they have the information to really make decisions and be empowered in that, and be able to say, here's the what if scenarios moving forward with that. When you have groups of teams doing that, you are now in control. So you have just taken the whole organization and elevated it through engagement. So this is the kind of things we wanted to highlight today. Hopefully that was helpful. I want to thank you again for your time. Really appreciate it. And we'd be happy to start a conversation.
Awesome. Thanks, Loren and Brian, for a great presentation today. If we didn't have time to answer your questions, we'll do our best to follow up with you after the webcast. Here is a link to an online survey where you can provide feedback for today's presentation. Please take a moment to complete this survey as your feedback is very important to us. Thank you for joining us and hope you'll join us again next time.